broadcasting live from an undisclosed location in the universe. Welcome to Iggy Garcia Live, the show where metaphysics, holistic living, motivation, and inspiration come together to empower your mind, body, and soul. We will dive deep into the realms of metaphysical wisdom, exploring the fascinating connections between mind and matter. Get ready to ignite your inner spark and embrace a journey of self-discovery. So, sit
Iggy
back,
here.
relax, and enjoy the ride.
All right, we're live. We're live here in Columbus, Ohio. And we are here on December 10th, 2025. We're getting ready to do a live podcast here. And our podcast today is the blueprint. That's what we're going to talk about, the blueprint. But like I start every show, before I start every show, I always start with lighting a candle, giving thanks to reach over here real quick to our ancestors. And the reason I do this is, just a recognition and to give thanks and to honor those who came before me or before us. So I light this candle, giving thanks to our ancestors, giving thanks to those people who walked the earth before us. There was a lot of people that came before us. Many, many, many people. And I know I talk about this a lot on my shows, but there's like over 4,000 people in your line just to get you to the place where you are today. So that's why I light this candle. Giving thanks, giving praise, giving acknowledgement, regardless if they were good or bad, either way, they still gave me life. I burn a little Palo Santo. Just to set the tone. Okay. Put that over here for now. Now, Sherry, how are you, my friend? Good to see you. Good to see you. All right, so here we go. We are almost through 2025. The year is ending very quickly. We're on the 10th day of this month, and we're cruising right along. And you know what? It goes really fast, doesn't it? I just turned 59 just a few days ago, and so I'm pretty. It kind of leaves you with a kind of an interesting feel in your mind, about, next year I'll be 60. But it's not a problem. It's it just makes you really think about, where you are in life and where you've been and what you've done and what you've traveled and why you are where you're at and why you're in certain situations and why you're in certain type of feelings or emotions about who you are. So I'm not complaining by any means. I'm not here to complain. That's not why I'm here. I'm just thinking. It's a reflection moment. It's time to reflect and go, wow. On my last show, I just said, oh yeah, I remember when I was 20. And it's true. I do remember when I was 20. I remember. What was I doing when I was 20? Don't exactly know, but I know that I was playing soccer, sports, and doing what most 20-year-olds do, right? Just hanging out with their friends, going out, working, all that kind of stuff. And so, I'm reflecting back at this year, and I reflect in the last 5 years and all the losses and stuff that happened in my life and all the things that I learned along the way, and the things that I have yet to learn. You never stop learning. It's just one of those things. You never get to that place. You're always going to the place, right? You're always learning and becoming more, evolved. You're becoming more open. You're becoming more, soft. Life is one of those things that can make you really hard or makes you really grumpy or really frustrated. But either way. So the reason for the show today, I call this episode The Blueprint. So I'm thinking today, I was thinking, what is the blueprint of life? What is the blueprint? Well, when you think about it, you go back and you reflect and you look about all the different things that have happened to get you to this place in time, this moment, the now, the wow, in the winning in this moment. The blueprint has been set for you, either by your parents, your grandparents, or whoever raised you, or whatever situation you've been put in. There's been a blueprint set up for all of us. There's a standard. There's this thing. We work 45 years in a job. A lot of us do, right? To retire, and hopefully have something in the end. But yet, the majority of us only have like $635 in our Social Security account, unless we, had something in IRAs or saved up. There's not even pensions anymore. Many companies done away with that. So you have to really 401ks and stuff like that. So I find it really fascinating, when I think about, you talk to people who are in business for themselves. And, when people who are in business for themselves, they'll sacrifice 5 to 10 years to be able to obtain and to get to the place they need to be. Because a lot of it, is the delay gratification. So many of us want things now. We want it right now, and so what happens is when we want it right now, is, we're impatient. Today I posted this video about growing up in the 70s. And I posted some of the pictures that I had on file there that I had on my computer. And, it took me back to think, a lot of things they talked about, it was just how as kids, we get up in the morning during the summertime, we get up in the morning, we'd ride our bikes, we go off and disappear, for the day. And, for some parents, it was not a big deal because they trusted their kids, and the kids went off and did their thing with their friends, and then they came back. And now, as long as you're back by before the street lights came on, you were cool. And for some people, that was a big thing. I mean, I had to be back before the street lights before the sun even went down. I had to be back. But I remember I wasn't a normal kid. I was one of those kids that, I played with my friends. I had fun. I went and collected salamanders in Iuka. There's a little place called Iuka down here by Ginola and in Summit and that. And I go down there and I lift the rocks and I grab the salamanders and I put them in a jar and take them home and put them in a bigger fish tank and just watch them. Then, I was really a curious kid, but when I think about it, I was a very entrepreneurial spirit kid. Like I always wanted to do something. I always wanted to be in business. I always wanted to be, doing something that created, my abundance. I didn't even know what I was doing. I just knew that I just enjoyed doing the jobs that I was creating. I shovel snow, I cut grass, whatever I could do. I even pushed, I was ice cream. I sold ice cream. I used a push cart and I would sell ice cream. And so it's not like I never really had any real job per se, except for working in the restaurant for my parents. But I never really had anything because I always wanted to be self-employed. I wanted to be my own businessman. So it's hard sometimes to explain to people what that means, to have that want to be in control, or just to have, the vision, the goals, the desires to create and to build something, from scratch, and just watch something grow and watch it nourish and just be in control of your own life, and be able to be in control of however hard or however focused, however, you planned, however you built your dreams and created the habits and the action plans you put together that you would create, you would make. Now, I have businesses that failed. I've had businesses that didn't do well. And not so much that I didn't work hard at it. It's just the timing wasn't right, or, it was bad location, or just poor planning on my part, or maybe it was just one of those projects that I wanted to do. But you know what? My life's taken me, and like I tell everybody, I grew up in a bar, grew up in a restaurant most of my life, and I watched my parents struggle. I watched my parents work hard. I watched my parents do all the things that, most people who own business would do. But I wanted that life because I felt like I had control in it. I knew that I had to being my own boss. I was responsible for dictating my success and how I was going to create success. But it wasn't under anybody's else's authority. It was my own authority to say, okay, if I do this, it works. If I don't do this, it doesn't work. But like if I had a job, I had one job, and I worked for a pharmaceutical company. I hated that job. It started out really cool and it was great because, it was just different from what I would do. But then I was the single guy, the young guy. And then they would just let me stay. Like everybody else go out and drink and have a good time. And they're like, oh, why don't you finish our projects? And I would find myself staying longer and longer. And I felt used and abused, at that moment. And then that's kind of like, then I would finish working there. And then I'd go to my dad's restaurant and I'd work. And then one day I just said, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to do this. So I took all the skills and all the things that I did when I was a kid, landscaping and cutting grass, shoveling snow, and I created my own company, Garcia's Landscaping, Garcia's Lawn Service. I started that as a young guy, and I did that for many, many years. It turned into a property management company. I got really excited about it. It was beating me up royally, just because, it's hard work, but I loved it. And I worked hard every day. Woo, excuse me. But yeah, I worked hard on that and I really enjoyed it. But I knew it was limited because I couldn't reproduce. I couldn't duplicate myself in the sense of I always had to do another job. I always had to do another job or create a job or establish an employment or job. And my biggest hang up was just the employees. Not being able to hire people who were dependable enough to work. As a young guy, too, people didn't take it as serious. So I found myself doing a lot of the work. And then I followed my parents' footsteps and I got into the restaurant business. And, and I loved that, but the hours were killer and brutal. And eventually I just decided, and then like most of you, anybody who's been in business at one time or another has probably met somebody who was in multi-level marketing. Somebody who, who sold Amway or, Equinox or Melaleuca and all these different companies. When you're in business for yourself, those guys like headhunting you, But, I did the Amway spiel. And you know what? It's probably the best education I ever got. It was one of those things that I wasn't really good at networking in the sense of selling these products and stuff. But you know what I was good at? I was good at people skills. And I learned how to be a better person at people skills. And so I took it as an education. Instead of going to college, I went to multi-level leveling school, and I learned how to promote, how to share, how to, create. And I know that the game has changed a lot. I remember when they first talked about, how the internet was going to explode. And, when I would talk to people about that in the past, people would just laugh at me and they're like, oh, that's never going to happen. Stores are always going to be around, blah, blah, blah. No one's going to buy online. No one's going to, oh my God, now it's like people go crazy buying online now. People go, Amazon is like one of the largest companies in the world. Not because people don't want to go to the store, but it's convenience. And I remember when Amazon first came out, it was a struggling company, but the thing that those guys did is that they just stuck to it. They stuck to it, they stuck with it, and they didn't give up. Because it's so easy to quit. It's so easy to give up when you're in the beginning of anything you begin. It's even like a relationship. You try to do your best, and you try to to impress. You try to make sure that you're doing all the right things. But you're gonna fail. You're gonna flumble. You're gonna create. Sometimes when you're in business for yourself, you're gonna be learning on the job, and that was one of the biggest things for me was learning on the job. Learning, even though some people have told me what to do, every situation is not applicable to every scenario. Some things cross over and some things don't. But the biggest thing is knowing, your demographic, your market, and everything like that. And that was something that I didn't really know when I was a young man starting. I just took every job, I took every situation, I took everything just because I thought I had to. Then eventually I got smarter and I got more, creative, and I didn't want to travel. I didn't want to work super hard. So what I would do is just concentrate my work efforts in certain spaces, in certain areas. And so that was one of the things. I just knew at a young age that that if I work for somebody else, I was never going to obtain my dreams to the fullest extent, because you just can't, because you're limited by the funds that you create, right? Because when you work for somebody, you're actually just helping somebody else build their dreams, and they're only going to be able to pay you what you're worth according to what the company brings in. So whatever, if you're getting paid $20 an hour, that's according to however they can pay you, so they can still come out and make a profit. There's a lot of financials, a lot of numbers, and a lot of crunching. Why people, we want to raise the minimum wage and different things like that. And I'm not against that. But, these companies also have their they have their figures where they have to figure out. They also, even if it's owned on the stock market by companies, then they have to pay the shareholders. So it can become very complicated. It can become very, very daunting sometimes. But as an independent company like myself, I didn't have to worry about those things because I was self-employed. Being an entrepreneur and self-employed, there's huge differences in that. Being self-employed means I just don't want to work with somebody, and I'm just going to do whatever I need to do in order to create and make enough income that I want to make. But, just like anything, when you're in your business for yourself, you also have to create fuel that drives you, that motivates you to get to that place where you want to be, the thing that makes you want to do what you got to do. Because it's so easy to get, sidetracked, to get burnt, to, quit and not do what you want to do. One of the biggest things that I learned was about in the beginning, when creating business for myself, is that, I remember as a kid why I wanted to do business, because when I was a kid, I wanted the money, because I knew the money equaled me getting the things that I wanted as a child, as a young kid. The cool thing about it was I made a lot of money as a kid. Did I make more money than I do now? Probably not. But as a 12-year-old kid, 10-year-old kid, shoveling snow and cutting grass, my pockets were full of cash. My friends were playing and goofing around, doing things. So, I goof around and play too, but I just had this drive to do things, my way, and do things how I wanted to do it. I tried all kinds of things and ideas just to see if they'd work. Some had a lot of potential, and sometimes I think it was just before my time, or maybe I just missed the the trend in that moment. But either way, it was fun to see. So, I was like a sponge. So anything I could grab and learn and become part of, I'd grab onto, because I figured within those things that I was learning, and from the people I was learning from, there's the nuggets. There's like these little pieces of gold that you just will get. It's like anything. You grab what you want. You extrapolate what you need, and you use it to, the benefit to help you however you want it to help you. Now, one of the things that I learned when I was starting was a thing called dreaming, and here in this country, we call it the American dream building. My parents came here. My father came here it was called the American dream. My dad, that's why he came here. My father came here because he believed that he could be successful here. And just here, he didn't believe he can go anywhere else and create that success like he did. That was just his thinking, and that's his mentality where he was. And he immigrated to America, overstayed his visa, and you know what? He, regardless, even without being a documented worker or citizen, or whatever, he still paid his taxes. Because that was something my dad always told me, is that he goes, listen, you pay your taxes, Uncle Sam won't bother you. And it's probably the reason why he didn't get deported when we had deportation, when they were going to deport us. Because eventually it catches up with you, and we had to go through the deportation process. And, but my dad, the reason they let him stay, and the reason we got to stay, is because regardless of a citizen or not, he paid his taxes. That impressed, the magistrate. Hey, you didn't have to pay taxes, but you paid your taxes. Because my dad believed that. My dad said, pay Uncle Sam first, and you have no problems. And I still believe that. To this day, I still believe that. I make sure that what is owed, I pay. Because then I don't have to worry about stuff. And I don't have to worry about anything in my mind and my psyche that I'm doing something underhanded or shady. But that's just me. That's just my idea. But the dream was one of the things that kept me, motivated. That was one of those things that kept me going. And, back then I didn't know what it was. I just knew it was a desire, it was a belief. It was the goals and stuff that I was doing these things naturally. I wasn't even doing them thinking about them so much. I just knew that if I put this much effort into it, I'm going to get more results. And then little by little, my dreams faster. I bought my own bike, I bought my own things, and then it was just kind of one of those things that you just learn how to do as a kid. And I watched my dad, he'd go out there and he'd collect the metal, and he'd go out there and drive his truck around, pick up newspaper. It was, now that I can look back, it's very admirable what my father did in order to succeed and create and save and to be able to open his restaurant. Now, did I want to be in the restaurant business? No, I did not want to be in the restaurant business. It wasn't my desire. That wasn't my dream. That was his dream. That was his vision. That was his goal. But regardless of whatever, I had to be part of it because I was his child. And so I had to learn. But then I get to learn all the people skills that comes along with that. And so I was, number one, I wasn't a shy kid to begin with. So I was always outgoing, and mischievous and getting into things and sometimes in trouble. But, the restaurant was a good teacher for me because the things that I learned there, I apply them to my life now to be able to communicate, to talk, to share, to listen, because I wasn't, able to do that. I don't know if could have done that. But I don't know because it didn't happen. Because it happened the way it did. And I'm grateful. So dream building was one of the things that was very, very important to me as I was learning from other entrepreneurs, other people who were way ahead of the game with me, people who were really, vitally had their own businesses and they were doing stuff. They said you had to have a dream. Your dream is your fuel. They told me that you can't just work to work because you won't have any desire. You literally must want some things and have some things that will make you happy along the road, along the way. To collect and to amass a fortune is not enough. The dream also means that you want to create more abundance, more wealth, and create more things. So, along came, The Secret and all these different programs and all these things. And, a lot of people jumped on that and things happened for some people and some things happen for people. But what people forget is that even though you may have these desires and these wants, you also have to have the belief that you're going to be able to obtain it. Because what happens is you have to, your frequency, your vibration, you have to vibrate at the frequency of wanting to receive and to have the acceptance of that coming to you. Because it's one thing just to want something and just say, oh yeah, I want $1 million. You want $1 million, but what's your goal? What's your plan? What's your vision? What's your action plan? What's your habits? What are you going to do for you to get to there? Because most people, when they come from a place where they just had a job most of their life and all of a sudden they want to be in the business, the reason they don't succeed is not because they don't have the desire, the dream, or the ambition to do that. It's because they don't have the vision, they don't have the goals, they don't have the action plan, and they don't have the habits, because we create habits along our way. And these habits are what keeps us, in a certain place. Sometimes you have to sacrifice in the short term in order to receive in the long term. And for a lot of people, that's tough. Because when most people work, they're like, it's 5:00, I'm off, I'm not going to do anything, or it's Friday and Saturday's my weekend. But I talked to a rich person one time, and they told me that their Friday is every day. It's not just Friday and Saturday. Their Friday can be any day they want, just because of the work and the commitment and the desire and everything they put into creating the wealth and the things they created. And I heard that, and I was like, that's kind of interesting. So we don't live for the weekends? No, because every day can be our weekend. If we want it, a Friday is a Friday, Saturday is a Saturday. But if we want Monday to be our Friday, we can. And I thought that was really fascinating. I thought that was kind of cool, because it's like, okay, I didn't understand because I wasn't in that paradigm. I wasn't in that way of thinking. And that's another thing that they taught me too, is who you associate with, who you're with, who you're around, who you're with the most. Are you with people who are empowering you, people who are putting you down, people who want to just keep you the way you are and don't want you to grow? That's the thing. That's the thing. You have to make sure that the people that you're around and the things that the information that you're absorbing and taking in is vitally important. Because if you take in the wrong information, then it gets programmed into your subconscious mind, it gets programmed into your heart, your spirit, your soul, and every aspect of yourself. Can you change it? Sure. But it's not an easy task. It's easier to fill the cup than to empty the cup, because you can overflow the cup and it still comes in. You become the container of receiving the information that comes to you. And so all this stuff that comes into you, flows into you, sometimes it's overwhelming and sometimes it's bombarding. But the biggest thing is to just stay focused. There are so many people who have so many great, amazing ideas, but the reason they can't do it is because they think they have to have money. They think they have to have education. They think they have to, have all these different things. The myth is education equals job and success. That's not true. I know. I have friends who have master's degrees and have doctorates, and they're unemployed. They're broke. Are they broke because of their education? No, they're not broke because of their education. They're broke because of the thinking, the stinking thinking, their mentality, and the things that they put in their head about themselves. Most of the times we don't succeed is because of the things, how we believe and how we look at ourselves, how we interpret who we are as human beings, how we look at the world and how we think the world perceives us. The world looks at us, yes, but the world dictates only if we allow it. Sure, the world can influence you and push, demands on you and push you into certain situations. But in the end, you still have the final say. You still have the final say what you truly want for yourself. So one of the things when you're going into business for yourself, and one thing, when you want to try to improve your life and do better, is to step away from people who want to keep you in the lows with you. They don't want you to succeed because they don't succeed. And most people don't do this because they're thinking about it. Most people just do it out of habit. And when I talked about habits are important. What kind of habits you have? I mean, do you procrastinate? Do you put things off? Creating good habits, creating discernment, creating all these different things. Most people don't fail because they don't want to. They fail because they fail to plan. They fail to create goals. And, I hear people say, oh, well, I don't need goals. Sure, you need some kind of direction. There's uprights on the football field and they call them goals, right? The uprights. And the reason they call them, because the goal is to put it between those two little sticks. They're not really little, but, between the uprights. That's your desire, And, sometimes you hit it and sometimes you don't. My Buckeyes didn't hit it over the weekend. Not because they didn't fail to plan. It's because sometimes when we miss, we have to come back and do it again, kick again, So you can't quit. You can't give up because you've had one failure. And, people who don't have, and people who've never been in business, always judge people and look at people who have failed in business and think that they're poor business people. It's not true. A good business person will shut down a business knowing that it's not successful and it's a money drain. I've closed down businesses. Was I a bad business person? No. It's just some things have its days and some things just don't work. It would be idiotic if you keep pumping money or no money or borrowing money and try to support something that's not functional. I hear a lot of people talk about Donald Trump, that he's a failed businessman. Sure, he's a failed businessman, but that doesn't mean he's failed in business. He's failed in that particular business. Any business person who's failed in business failed in that particular business. Now, you look at anybody who's got a lot of money and you can go back and do the research, you can study them. They've all fallen flat on their face. I've fallen flat on my face. I'm not even near being a wealthy person like those guys. But the money that I do make and the desires and dreams that I do create, it was hard work to get where I'm at. But most business people fail because they fail to plan. Or they align themselves with wrong groups, or they just take the wrong miscalculated trend. There is no perfect thing. There's perfection and imperfection, but business is one of those things that it's a gamble, it's a risk. It's anything. It's a risk and a gamble if you get a job, because you don't know if that business, because remember, the job you have, unless it's a corporate entity in the sense of, or a federal business, entity or government entity, which has a little more structure in the sense that there's money pumped into it. But if you go work for a corporation, you take a gamble that this corporation, you hope this corporation doesn't go bankrupt. You hope that this corporation doesn't go out of business, because that means if it does, all the time and effort you put into it is gone and out the window if it fails. You're as good as the corporation. The employees are as good as the corporation. And what happens is sometimes these businesses fail because the people who work in these corporations, in these businesses, okay, what happens is they don't put the time and effort. I got my job, so I don't need to do anything. I'll just do enough. I always tell my kids when I coach soccer, I say, how you practice is how you play. Okay? When you guys graduate from high school, some of you guys are going to work at McDonald's temporarily. Be the best freaking McDonald's worker you could be. Create the good habits of work ethics right there and then. If you don't want to have your own business, but if you want to work for a corporation, you want to go to college, you want to work, then create the habits, form those habits, so when you get to the job that you truly want, or the job that pays you well, you'll have good habits when you get there. You won't be the slacker. You won't be that person. You won't be the person they may lay off. But I don't know. I'm just saying, just do the best you can when you're there. You've got to be there, because what you put into anything, friendships, relationships, it is all dictating on how you are in the process. You're as much responsible how a friendship or relationship creates, or how responsible you are in the business you create. But you have to keep moving forward, even in life. Life is one of those things. What's your blueprint in life? You can ask just about anybody here in this forum. What's your goal for next year? What's your goal for tomorrow? What are you going to do in the next 5 years? What's your plan? Most people just work day by day and get by, and paycheck to paycheck, because we've been conditioned. And conditioning is one of those things that is indoctrinated. That's what I'm saying. Even in the process, everything that we have, everything that you see, the way you look at this, we see the world, the way that it's structured, the way it's created by the ancestors, by the people that came before us. And those people are banking and counting that you're not going to change much of it. You're going to keep it the same, so the process continues and keeps going. But we have the right to change and manifest and recreate. But there's always a group of people, and there's always a group of, entities that don't want that. They don't want that. We don't teach our kids in school to be entrepreneurs. We don't teach our kids to go off and do things for themselves. We teach our kids, you have to go to college if you can. If you can't go to college, then you go to trade school. And I'm going to tell you, trade schools some of these people are more wealthy people in the world. People who are welders, people who are carpenters, people who create, who work air conditioning and heating, 4-year degree doesn't guarantee you squat diddly do, man. Okay. I went to college and I met a teacher there. Okay. I met a guy there. And when I went, it was called Columbus State back then? I forget what it was called. It wasn't called Columbus State. I want to call it CTI or something like that. But yeah, when I went there, I remember being in that business class, sitting there, and I'm thinking, and I had my landscaping company back then. And I just thought, I got to get an education, because if I don't, because everything that you can learn, you can go on the internet now and learn it. And most jobs you have today don't require a degree, Now you have, all these, people who work on computers and different things like that. But, go back to my story. I had this teacher, and I don't remember his name right off, my professor. And I remember he walks in, he's like, "Hey, how you doing, guys?" Blah, blah, blah. He's well dressed, like crocodile shoes, just class, I was impressed with that. I was like, damn, because the last professor, he was just like a raggedy dude, he just looked like a scraggly pup, but this guy was he was sharp. This black guy was sharp. And he's like, "I'm going to tell you a secret." He goes, "Most of you guys are going to fail. Most of you guys are not going to make it through college." He told it just like that. Most of you guys are going to leave just because you don't have the dedication, you don't have the desire, and you don't have the willpower to push through. even though you think you need this. He goes, but I'm going to tell you a secret. You don't have to go to college. He told me, you don't have to go to college to make money. He goes, but this is what I do. I take my paycheck and we live off, my wife and I live off of it. We take her paycheck and we invest it and we save it. So let's say he was making $100,000. They lived off the $100,000. They took her $60,000 or $100,000, whatever they were making. They would save it and pocket it. And that was their goal. That was their goal. That was their action plan. That was their habit. That was their vision. That was their dream that they worked out. Did it work out for them? I don't know, because I never saw them after that, because that was the last day I went to college. That's the last day that I went there. And so I went to Ohio State for a year, and that was no fun. I didn't enjoy that either. But, it's stuck in my head. That's still in my head. Like, it's right here. It's like, that's like a program. Like, if you want it, you could go get it. No one's going to give it to you. You got to go hunt for it. You got to go want it. Even like a job, you want a good job, then you got to do the things that will take you and propel you into that job. If you have job mentality just above broke, like they say, you go for those things. Now, if you want a business and you want to be self-employed or entrepreneur, you want to be a person who knows who wants to really strive and do more for themselves and create wealth, do some research. Study the people who came before you. Study the Rockefellers. Study the people who are millionaires and billionaires. And there's a pattern. There's a pattern language with all these guys. The Rockefellers, what they did is they took out, insurance policies on each other's people's, their family members, and they put it into a trust fund, and then they would borrow against the trust fund, and the money, when someone would pass off, they would take that money and put it into the trust fund, and just accumulate it and accumulate it and accumulate it. But that's called planning. That's called action plan. That's called creating habits. That's creating goals. The average person doesn't do that because we're designed, we're taught, we're told, and sometimes some of us don't have the same capacity as others to go to school and to be patient, to have the skills, to sit there for 4 years and stuff, because we have so many things that are pinned against us sometimes that we have to figure out a different strategy for our lives. And then some of us just don't want to go to school, and I get that. That's fine. But those people who really, truly want to be entrepreneurs, those people who truly, truly want to work and find their way, the ones who really step outside the crowd, they're not always partying. They're not always doing the things that they do. They're out there creating and manifesting. Manifestation is just creation, creating things and creating the dreams and the visions. And like I told you earlier, when you have a dream, and the dream could be something material in the interim to create and to get you where you need to be. You may want a car. You may want a nice car. Well, you can't have a nice car unless you sit in the car, test drive the car, look at the car, have a picture of a car. You've heard of storyboards where people create storyboards. You don't have to be in business to create storyboards. You can do this in your own life too. The thing is, like I said earlier, we don't teach our kids to dream. We teach our kids to simulate. That's a big word right now, a simulation. They're like, to dream is to want to create more for yourself. It's just a dream. No, but things create with a dream. Create with an idea. Some of you are great manifestors. Like, you have these great ideas. I know some of you. You have these amazing ideas. And then 2 days later, you turn on the TV like, oh my God, that was my idea. Yeah, it was. But you didn't jump on it. You didn't capitalize on it. But you created yours because there's nothing new under the sun. It's there if you want it. But someone else took it, planted it, someone else grew it, watered it. Another person came and harvested it, and vice versa, and vice versa, and vice versa. Sometimes we're just the conduit to create the abundance and to create the flourishing of what's going to happen. Why do you think they create think tanks? Think tanks are where they come up with ideas with stuff. Yeah, you get paid, but these guys make millions of dollars, billions of dollars off someone's thinking, someone's creation, someone's dream, someone's idea. Half the stuff that we see, half the stuff that we saw was created in someone's mind. You know, you ever heard, let's build a better mousetrap? But yet the mousetrap that we use today is still the most simplistic way of doing stuff. Sometimes we complicate things as humans. We try to make things too hard. So it's vitally important just to sometimes just keep it simple. Keep it easy. But we think that we have to get really, fascinating. Today in this world, if you want to be in business for yourself, it's probably much more easier to do. Just because the advent of social media, the connections of, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. I'm watching on TikTok, I'm watching people making a living promoting other people's products. They're making $10, $20, $30 just by talking online. Buy this calculator. This is the best calculator I've ever seen. This calculator has 3 multifunctionals, and then somebody else is going, ooh, I need a calculator. I want to buy a calculator. You can buy today. You click the link down here, the orange link down here at the bottom. You see it? Yeah. For a limited time only. If you don't see the link, it means we sold out, I mean, it's just, it's action plan. It's desire, it's dream. Everybody's like, this or that, other boo-hoo, TikTok. I remember when we hated TikTok. Now we love TikTok. Now we don't like this, we don't like that. But there are people making serious income online. I'm writing books, but you know what? It takes time. You don't just become rich overnight. You have to work. Success. When you plant your seeds in your gardens, and when you sow your seeds in your under your lights, you plant it today. You don't come back tomorrow and go, oh, it hasn't grown yet. No, because there's a process to it. You have to water, you have to light it, keep it warm. You have to give it time. You have to let it synergetically fuse and connect with the soil. It's the same way with you. You have to connect and be part of it. And you just got to be in there. And the thing is, with your dream, you create the drive and the desire and the passion to do what you want to do. And, sometimes I know people who are in business and, it's not their passion business, but it makes them money. And, it's the money they create is more for the things that they want to obtain, the things that they want to create, and the other businesses they want to create. Sometimes people go into a business so they can create the ideal business that they truly want to do. They're called stepping stones. So a blueprint is, it's just like anything. When you build a building, you start with the foundations. It's the same way when you're learning, you create the foundations of your business and how you want to do it. When you create and when you want to learn about business, you talk to people who are in business. You don't go to your next door neighbor who does nothing. He just works at the 7-Eleven. Because he's going to give you his thinking about it versus his feeling about it. And they're not qualified to give you the answers you're looking for. It's like when you go to the doctor because they're qualified to give you the answers that you're looking for. You don't go, and then you go specific doctors for specific reasons. You got your foot doctor, you got your dentist, you got your heart doctor. You don't go to your foot doctor to talk about your, dental stuff. So they're specializing. So when you're in business, if you see something you like, ask somebody, oh, I want to do that kind of business. So what's it take? Well, it's going to take this. This is what I did. Doesn't mean that it's going to be successful for you. There's this myth that competition is bad, but competition is good. People are so afraid that, there's a billion plus people, billions of people in the world who are willing and ready to buy your stuff. If 1% of the people in the world bought your stuff, you'd be a wealthy person. You don't need the whole world to buy your stuff. Even 0.5% of the world. That's just an example, but we get caught up in these mythologies and these myths that things have to be a certain way and things have to be perfect situation. There are no perfect situations. Inch by inch, success is a cinch. That's kind of how you have to be. To walk a mile, you have to take the first steps. You don't just walk a mile. But I don't know why people don't apply that to business or being self-employed or even going to school or being in relationships with other people. But the biggest thing is know who's in your circle. Who are the people around you? This is vitally important, especially when you're trying to grow and you're trying to manifest a new version of yourself and you want to do better for yourself. Make sure that you have the right people around you, because there are people who just indirectly or indirectly will sabotage you. The indirectly sabotagers don't mean to, they just do. But there are people who directly sabotage you. Those you don't want in your life. The ones who indirectly sabotage, you need to make them aware of what your goals and plans are. And if they're not on board, then you just have to say, for the time being, I just need to stay away. I don't know what you guys are looking for. I don't know what your goals, your dreams, or desires are, and what you would like to manifest and create in your life. Maybe you're happy working 9 to 5 and working 45 years for somebody and then retiring and getting maybe $1,000 a month or 600, whatever. And if that's what you want, that's good. And that's great. But, people are making money off of everything. Business has changed so much that now there are people who don't even really have to work very hard anymore, because what they do is they take your car, okay, they hire you for almost nothing really to go deliver food to somebody's house. You're on an app. They send a little map on there. You go to the store, you go to the restaurant, you pick up the food, you put it in your car, and you drive it to somebody else's car. And you get a percentage of that, whatever that was, in the tip maybe. That's using other people's money. That's using other people's resources. That's kind of where we're at. That's what's happened. That's how business has evolved. You've got DoorDash, you got Uber, you got the Airbnb, businesses. You got landscaping companies are like that now. Pretty much almost every business, a lot of businesses now are all work like that. You can rent your car to people. Like if you don't drive if you have a second car, you don't drive it much, you can rent it out. This is crazy. This is like unheard of, when we were growing up, when we were younger, when I was in my 20s, we wouldn't even think of that, not think of it. I mean, we wouldn't think to do that. And now it's like it's normal. These companies have found ways. These people have ingenuity. They're thinking their thought. How can we streamline things? How can I make money without touching any physical product? It fascinates me. You could drop ship. Some of you guys have your your little websites where you sell your things on here. All you do is you post it, sell it, and then you present it. You advertise it, and then someone's like, "Oh, I need that," and then they buy it, and you get a commission. You get a little check from that. It's just there's just so much out there. What's right? What's wrong? What's the best way? I don't know. That's for you to decide for yourself. What you think you're going to do, what you think you should do, what you think would be the best situation for you. Anyhow, it's pretty fascinating being in business today. Being in business today is so different than being in business in the old days. Now, most restaurants aren't that busy. Most restaurants or people are just getting carryouts all the time. It's unheard of, and their food doesn't come hot. It doesn't come hot. It's just, it's warm. But it's happening. It's an advanced pizza delivery system. Now these companies don't even have to hire pizza delivery guys, because these guys who work all these these app businesses, They do the delivery and they create a commission. It's just really pretty wild. But anyhow, it's just kind of where we're at. It's the evolution of business. It's evolving. Why? Because our thinking and our mind and our ingenuitive and our creation is always evolving, because human beings evolve, because that's what we do. We're not designed to stay too long and too idle in the same energy. We have to create new energy, create new vibrations, new manifestations, new creations. The person who tells me that they can't make it, and it's hard for me to believe that, because there's so much opportunity in this country. There's so much opportunity in the whole world. Oh, I physically can't do it. Well, that's one thing. But those who are not physically incapable, those who are capable, there's no reason why you can't go out there and do stuff. I hear people say, well, it's a waste of money for me to just go out there and do that, because it's almost been more gas on driving here and there. Yeah, maybe it's true, maybe not. I don't know. It's an excuse. I hear that. To me, that's an excuse. You could be doing multiple things. You could be multitasking. It's just, but this is for people who want business. I'm not talking to the average Joe Schmo or woman who don't give a rat's, don't care, because they're happy, they're content where they're at. That's fine. You're content. Then don't worry about this conversation. This one's not for you. I'm talking for the people who want more, who are looking to get outside of the norm, get outside of the curvature, get outside of the dictation of, what you do. You're dictated by the situation you're in. If you have a job, you're dictated by how much advancement you can have, how much you can obtain, how much you can grow. It's the truth. You can only go up so far. And some of you don't want to go very far. Some of you work hard. The time of our grandparents, where there was a pension, there was a good foundation, those days are gone. We have to diverse, into the work we do. That's why we have 401ks. That's why we have IRAs. That's why we have CDs. That's why we have the stock market. That's why we have all these other things. Now they got Bitcoin and all these different things. Why? Because you have to diversify yourself, because the system that's in place right now is not working. There are jobs out there, but it's not for all these jobs are not. Not everybody's qualified to have all these jobs. They're specialized jobs. That's why it's super important. The trades are valuable. The trades will never die. Those of you who are looking for something different, the trades will never die, and the trades aren't hard. The trades are, one of those things where it's a little more manual, it's a little more work, but the trades are a necessity of value to the growth of any empire, the growth of any country, the growth of any city, the growth of any community. People who know how to wire, people who know how to, do carpentry, people who know how to, just weld, create, heating and air conditioning, people who have the dumpster companies, anything. The trades are valuable. That's why these guys who have these trade companies, these companies are super ultra wealthy. Some of these guys, you don't hear about it because you know what? No one really looks into it. But a lot of these big companies and a lot of the smaller companies are being bought out by bigger companies and by conglomerates who just buy companies. There's a business just to buy businesses. I don't know if you knew that. There are people who just buy businesses out. They buy out the owner. They pay off the owner with the money that they make in the business. And then once they pay off the owner, it's their business. Then they either load off the business or whatever. But they buy the license, they use the license. Like if they're an electrician, they'll pay them to use the license or keep them on as a consultant. It's really interesting. It's really fascinating when you start to look at things. I remember when I was looking into a window washing company with my brother-in-law. And the guy was teaching us not so much to wash windows, but it was more to buy the businesses, smaller business companies that already had established clientele. Why? Because that's where the money was. It was already established. It was already created. All we had to do is go in there, take over the accounts, and continue working them. With the 1099s that we had established. So the idea wasn't to work harder. The idea was to work smarter. I met a kid who was 19 years old. He was a millionaire because why? Because that's all he did. He would go out and buy these other companies, and he would go to these construction sites, and he'd go to talk to the foreman, whoever he needed to talk to. And he said, who's going to clean the windows once these projects are completed? And they're like, oh yeah, we need to do that. And he'd give his bid like $5 a window. You have a big building and they got 100 windows, they got 200 windows, 300 windows. That's a lot that adds up really quick, inside and out. So super, 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 smart kid, and then he didn't just use like his hands. They used like these booms, like they washed with these special booms. So it's just being able to do these things and create these things and want to do these things. It's just, are you willing to work? Are you willing to do what it takes? Are you willing to do what it takes to step outside the norm of society? So like I said, if you need to find out and you're interested in a certain type of business, then ask people who are in that business. There's tons of forums online. You have so much information. You have ChatGPT. You have Gemini. You have Google. You have YouTube. My God, you have vast resources to do whatever you want. So there's no excuse for not being able to be in business if you want to be in business, because all that stuff's available to you. Everything is there. You can ask ChatGPT how to become an empire, and it'll give you that. Sure, type that in, and it'll give you a step-by-step plan according to what you want to do. Why? Because it calculates and it creates the data of what's successful. You have the resources in your hand. People are authoring books using, artificial intelligence. People are creating artwork through artificial intelligence. People are creating calculations and manifestations through artificial intelligence. So it's not cheating. It's using the system. It's creating. It's being, it's like driving a stick and then driving an automatic. Are you cheating? Driving an automatic car versus a stick car? No. The game just changed. It's a little easier to drive. Now you don't have to use a stick shift. Now cars autonomously drive themselves. Is that cheating? No, it's not cheating. The cars we have advanced to the place where cars can drive themselves with little or no human interaction. Some cars can pick you up and take you to your destination now. Where your mentality is, where your mind is, that's what holds you back. If you think something it shouldn't be that way, then you're a realist and you're a naturalist because you think things have to be natural. No, sometimes ingenuity and creativity is what creates and fosters more stuff to happen. We don't go to space and send space probes because someone said we could do it or couldn't do it. If we listened to all the people who said we couldn't do it, we wouldn't be anywhere. The first people who took flight, if they listened to all the people say, oh, you can't fly, only birds can fly. We probably wouldn't be on airplanes today if they listened. The first person who invented a car, the person who invented the wheel or created the wheel. The person who used to use the horse and buggy and then you had a little motorized car. You're going to get stuck in the mud. And eventually what happens? Things evolve, things change, things move on. And that's what I'm trying to say is you just have a dream, have a vision, have a goal, have an action plan. and create new habits. So a good teacher might tell me, you're the books, the people, the habits, and all the things that you do. You become that. You're the company you keep. So be careful about the company you keep. That's even your family. The company you keep is vitally important. So what are you reading? What are you listening to? Who are you talking to? What are you eating? What are you watching? And this applies in the real world, not just in business. This applies in your everyday life, who you are as a human being. You know? Who are you hanging out with? You know, those are vitally important. You can just look online. You can go turn on your TV, your computer, and you can see what has happened to people because of association. Casual association, or just knowing association, or just plain not caring. Now you see all this repercussions it can have on you. So be careful when you're out there, when you're in the world, who you're hanging out with, who you're talking with, who you're gathering information from. Is it benefiting you? Does it help you? Is it helping them? You know, I want to believe that people are good, but I also understand that there are some bad people out there. Some people don't really care. Not because they want to be bad. Sometimes people just get into a place where they just become that, which they didn't want to be, and then they just become that. Is everybody good? No. Is everybody bad? No. But regardless, the universe hears everything we want. The universe responds to our reaction, responds to our feelings and our emotions. So the universe is with us. The universe, you know, is with us all the time, giving us yes and no, and it doesn't give us falsehoods. Some people call it the higher self. You know, higher self doesn't go, you don't got a higher self. Oh, how's my shirt look? It looks great, Iggy. No, it doesn't do that. The universe doesn't do that. The universe is very absolute. I would like to be wealthy. Yes. Am I going to be wealthy? Yes. Am I not going to be wealthy? Yes. And it also it likes the word no. It likes the word yes and no's. It doesn't work with maybes. It's just yes or no. However you apply the words and you move those words around, the universe responds to that. So be careful. You know, you ever hear that? Be careful what you wish for. Why would we say that? And we're talking about about manifestation. And we're here, we teach our kids, be careful what you wish for. We tell our friends, be careful what you wish for. So that means it works. That means it's real. It means it's true. So when you ask for things, be specific, be clear. You know, make sure that when you want to manifest something, that you know how you want it to be. It's no different than ordering a hamburger, man. You can ask for a hamburger and they'll give you whatever they think a version of a hamburger is. Oh, okay, here. Then you get your hamburger, you're like, oh, where's the lettuce and the tomato and the ketchup and mustard? Well, you didn't ask for that. You just give me a hamburger. Most hamburgers come with with a bun, the top and the bottom, right? Yeah, but come on, man. I wanted a hamburger that had ketchup. You didn't ask for that. Now, if you want the hamburger with the works, and then you come back and you say, well, I didn't want pickles. Well, then you should say, I don't want pickles. The universe works the same way, man. It works the same exact way. It hears your request and it'll give it to you. And that's called vibration. That's called frequency. Where you resonate and how you resonate is what you receive. If your frequency is vibrating a certain frequency or certain resonancy, and you come from a place of, truthfulness, heartfulness, and wanting, it hears you, man. It's there. So whatever you want in this world, you have to be specific on how you want that. That's with friendships, relationship, with your kids. We're the biggest teachers to the world. We teach people how to treat us. People don't just treat us bad. We have a tendency to present ourselves in a way where people think that they can treat us a certain way because the way we behave, the way we react or respond, or don't react or respond at all. It's not about getting angry and mad or bitter. It's just about presenting yourself. We're always on sale. We're selling ourselves constantly. If you want to give yourself a good light and you want to present yourself in a certain light, then present yourself in that way. If you don't shower for weeks and you expect people to like you or not be around you, well, that's what you're going to get, because no one's going to want to be around you. And if you're loud and obnoxious, some people don't like that either. It's your job to read the room, create, manifest, and know what you need to do. Too many of us just assume that people should just like us because, no, that's not how it works. There are people who like you. There are people who dislike you. That's just life, man. There are people who think you're cool, and there are people who think you're a jerk, and you didn't do anything to them. That's just the way it is. That's on them. That's their projection. That's their judgments about themselves and how they project onto others. You do it too. I do it. You do it. We all do it. Primo, ¿cómo estás? I'm looking here in the comments and I see my friends on here. Kid, Carlos, Sherry. Appreciate you guys being on here. But you guys just know this. Do the best you can. Be in the present moment. Be present. Being present means be in the now, being here. What happened yesterday is over. What's coming in the future, we don't know. Because when we get there, we're in the present. Just adjust and readjust and reevaluate as you go. I know I rambled a lot and I talked about, but the blueprint is your blueprint. You create these blueprints of how you want to create the world and what you want to do. My world is my world and I create what I want in my world. Could it be better? Sure, but that's up to me to make it better. Because there's a part of me that wants it to be a certain way. Same with you guys. There's a part of you that wants it to be a certain way. So with that, let's leave with those thoughts. Just do and be the best version of yourself in any given moment. Because you spend more time with yourself than with any other human being in the world. You know your faults. You know your strengths. And sometimes we need validation from other people to say, hey, yeah, you're great. You're good. Once you get it, move on. Move forward. All right, guys. I appreciate y'all hanging in here with me. I hope that you got some things out of it. I get really passionate about business because I love business. I just enjoy it. I like working for myself. I enjoy being my own boss. I get so much satisfaction with it. Some days are good, some days are bad. And I don't want to call them bad. They're character building days. Some days it just, I'm like question myself, why am I doing this? But I wouldn't have any other way. All right, guys, it's good to be here. Ho'oponopono matakuyasin. Go to iggygarcia.com and sign up to my mailing list. Go on YouTube and subscribe to my YouTube page, Facebook. I'm also here on TikTok, and I'm on X, and I'm on all social media platforms pretty much. If you like what you heard, drop me a line. Let me know. Let me have a little, feedback, what you agree or disagree with or whatever. But either way, you guys have a great, great, powerful evening, and I will see you next time. Be well, and I will see you guys soon. Love you, Sherry. You rock. Keeping you in my prayers. You take care of yourself. Let's talk. If you need anything, let me know. Guys, be well, be good. Just remember, if it's going to be, it's up to you. If it's up to me, it's going to be. And like I say, it's good to be here, because it always is, regardless if it is or isn't. It's always good to be here. And remember the word reciqui, which is a Quechua word, means gratitude. So be grateful for what big or small or little you have in all of the experiences that you've had along your life. Because they've made you stronger. They've made you question. They've made you think about things. And just remember, keep dream building. Keep creating that vision. Keep having that dream, okay? And keep having those goals. Keep rewriting your goals. Reassess them. But always have an action plan. Know where you're going. Have your map. Create your map. And create good, healthy limits and boundaries and good habits with yourselves and with other people. And don't forget, inch by inch, success is a cinch. Okay? All right, guys. Take care, and I'll see you next time.